I think you'll enjoy this next part of the conversation. So we have climate. It's changing. We have the challenge of feeding a hungry planet. 880 million people who confront food insecurity. We have farmers who are dealing with drought and pests and other challenges. How do we incorporate the science into that? There may be no more controversial issue than Monsanto. GMOs. Somebody say Monsanto. Have I got an answer for you? So we saw this in the students' stories that were told too on the GMO issue. So I want to show you this first video that was shot by our friends at Roger Williams University. Where's Roger Williams? Over here. Where is Roger Williams?
Bristol, Rhode Island.
Bristol, Rhode Island. And Professor Michael Scully has had this class, and they have produced some incredible videos, and you can see all of these online at planetforward.org if you want to go to them. But I want you to see a clip of this one, because these students found a new fast food restaurant called Be Good, right? That's riding the wave of healthy foods, but no GMOs. Here's the story.
The concept is easy to sell to the consumer. We're putting healthy food back into the consumer's stomachs. So it's definitely a fast food franchise, but we're doing it the right way. So no garbage, no GMOs. We're almost GMO free. Our gluten menu is amazing. It's almost entirely, the restaurant is gluten free. So we have options for everybody, and I think that's where we're growing so fast.
That's where we're growing so fast. So who shot the video here? Macy here? How fast are they growing? Fast? How fast are they growing?
Right now they're a $1.5 million corporation.
And how long have they been around? Is it a pretty new company?
Pretty new. Right now they're in 7 states. They have 18 locations. But when I was doing the project, people were whispering about even more locations in Rhode Island.
So, yeah. And Michael Scully, what did you think of this piece that they did? What was the quality of it?
Well, they did some great work. And when I spoke to them about this project, I told them to follow the menu around. So Macy and her team ended up doing not only the restaurant, they did the guy that gives the ice cream for the milkshakes, the guy that does the bread for the rolls, and some of the local produce producers, all within a 10-mile radius of the restaurant.
So they're riding the locavore wave and they're riding the health wave. That's one point of view, anti-GMO. Here's another. This is a story that was submitted in blog form to us from one of our students, Anna Sumi, who's a GW student. And she went and she did her work, and she said, I think a lot of the confusion over GMOs comes from a lack of understanding with the public. My view of GMOs was marred by years of science fiction tales and growing up in a hippie town. Part of my hesitation came from the idea of big food companies messing with my food. Genetically modifying organisms, though, she concludes, does not create a new freak plant, but aims to take an advantageous trait from the gene of one plant and implanted to the gene of another, generally making the modified plant better suited for growing. Two different points of view. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I think we should have a frank conversation about GMOs and about how this all fits together. And I call it a frank conversation because I'm Frank. And my guest is Mike Frank. And where does he work? He works at Monsanto. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mike Frank.
Thank you very much.
First of all, I want to, in the interest of transparency and explanation, Monsanto has been a supporter of this project. But so you understand, Monsanto does not give us any input or suggestions or advice on what the conversation is or where we take it. And Mike Frank agreed to come here to have a frank conversation.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so let's start. So not one to mince words, let me ask the question this way. Monsanto is synonymous with GMO, as we just heard from somebody who shouted it out. Europe doesn't want them. Africa won't take them. Vermont wants to label them. If GMOs are so good and the science is so strong, why are they so much the villain in this story?
Yeah. So firstly, Frank, thanks for inviting me here. We're really pleased to be part of the dialogue, and it's so inspiring to see so many students that have so much passion and energy and brilliance that are making a difference. And so we are inspired. As a company, we work with farmers around the world to try and make them more productive and try and make agriculture more environmentally sustainable. And let me start by talking to the video a little bit. This is the first time I saw the video, and I think a lot of the dialogue is about this system or this system. And my perspective is it should be an and. We need to make all forms of agriculture more productive, more sustainable, whether it's organic, conventional without GMOs, or opportunities with new and even improved GMO technology. So, the science is impeccable. If you look at the scientific consensus on safety and the benefits of GMOs, it's clear. I think the second video that you shot kind of spoke to that, or that you spoke to. And the arguments for the most part are no longer around the science. It's now more discussions on labeling and things like that. And again, our perspective is, consumers should have choice, and farmers should have choice in terms of the tools that they get to use.
Well, let's take this one at a time. Let me come back, though, to GMO, because a lot of people say, you say the science is impeccable, but I don't believe that.
Okay.
And I don't believe that because I don't know what this is going to do 1-2 generations down the line. Or you genetically modify things so more Roundup can be put down, and then we create weed intolerance. So it's a cycle. What is your response to that? Because it's not purely about the safety of the consumed product, certainly related to it, though.
Yeah. So GMO improved seed has been sold since 1996. And early on, those arguments were very loud in terms of how do we know that this is going to be okay and the safety is going to be okay, and how can we trust just Monsanto? If it's your information and data that's saying it's okay, how can we trust just you? So if you fast forward from 1996 to today, there's been over 4.5 billion acres of GMO seed planted around the world from an acre standpoint. So it's on a lot of acres. There's been over 1 trillion meals served with GMO improved grains and food, and there's not one health issue. So that's just kind of one fact. The other fact is today there's over 1,700 peer-reviewed articles that talk about and looked into the safety of GMOs. And about 1/3 of those are from industry or sponsored by industry companies like Monsanto, and 2/3 are independent. And virtually all of the peer-reviewed scientific journals have come to the same conclusion, that it is safe. In addition to that, if you look at the regulatory bodies around the world that look at GMOs, here in Europe, in China, and elsewhere, they've also looked at all the studies and came to the same conclusion, which is that GMOs provide a benefit for farmers because they help manage pests and bring value, and secondly, that they're safe in the environment and from a food standpoint.
And you mentioned Europe, but Europe's response is, hell no, we won't GMO. I mean, you can't sell a GMO product there.
Right. So it's probably another misconception. So the reality is, so you're right, there's not a lot of GMOs that are planted in Europe today. There are some, specifically in Spain and a few other countries. But Europe is not self-sufficient in grains, and so they import a lot of grains from the US, from South America, and virtually all the corn and soybeans that they need to import because they're not self-sufficient have GMOs. And so, the Europeans are also consuming GMOs the same as North Americans and South Americans and people around the world.
You talk about safety, and this is something that I think is worth explaining to people, and that is, what is the testing process? All right, so when you go to clinical trials with a new medicine, it goes through a very extensive clinical trial process. Do you have something equivalent with GMOs before they are offered to the marketplace? When you say they're safe,
right?
What's that built upon?
So the regulatory bodies look at both the food safety and they look at the environmental impact. And virtually everywhere around the world, it's kind of the same assessment. And independent regulatory bodies have all concluded the same outcome, which is that the food part of it is safe. And they look at a lot of data, as you said, from a health and safety standpoint. And from an environmental standpoint, there's also a lot of different rigor that goes into the testing.
What would you like to see science, if you didn't have the politics and you didn't have the public opinion involved, if you were just looking at what science could do with respect to drought and some of the issues that we face with climate change, where could these crops or other biotechnology have a really beneficial effect, which is what many people say they could have if allowed?
Right. No, that's fantastic. So if you step all the way back and look at, so what are the problems that we're trying to solve, and what's this dialogue even today about? It's how do we feed the planet today, the almost 7.5 billion people that are on the planet today, and we're not doing a great job. There's still almost 1 billion people that go to bed hungry and don't have enough nutrients. And if you fast forward in 35 years, there's going to be over 2 billion more people. The economy is growing, especially in countries that have a large population like Africa and Asia. They're moving from a carbohydrate-only diet to a diet that is more balanced, that has more protein in it. And as someone said earlier, even the FAO has estimated that we have to increase food production by 70% over the next 35 years. And we don't have more acres to put into production unless we take down forest, which I think is a really bad idea. There's about 12 billion acres of forest around the world. We need to keep that intact. So we need to help farmers be more productive. And so we have to get more bushels out of every acre. Yesterday was Earth Day, and it's 45 years old. So if you look at the U.S. alone, back in 1970, on the first Earth Day, U.S. farmers produced about 71 bushels per acre of corn. Last year, they produced 171 bushels per acre of corn on average. So in 45 years, they went from 71 to 171. And that's because they've gotten more productive. They have more tools, new innovations, including improved seed and other tools that we've...
Well, in corn, almost all the corn that's grown in this country is GMO corn.
Most of it is. Correct.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you a couple quick questions, and then I want to open it up to the audience's questions for Mike Frank here from Monsanto. One, Monsanto not only has to defend itself as you're here to do and to explain on the issue of GMO, but on issues of Roundup pesticides, that kind of thing. Mark Bittman wrote a really scathing op-ed not long ago saying, stop making us guinea pigs, and directed at you and Monsanto and said, you guys should be the ones who are out there testing this stuff to see if this is carcinogenic and going to cause cancer. Suing farmers, that's a story that's managed to stick, much to your pleasure, I'm sure. But how do you respond to these things? What is from your perspective, the reality here?
Right. Well, I think the best way to respond is to have an open dialogue and to talk to people about what we do, why we do it, and to try and dispel a lot of myths. The reality is with social media and even other media sources, there are a lot of myths that are talked about with modern agriculture, and Monsanto often is a lightning rod and mentioned in some of those stories. And so we are very proud of what we do. I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan. Our family's still involved in farming. I've worked with farmers all my life around the world, large farmers and small farmers. I have the pleasure of getting a chance to travel around the world. Recently I was in a country, Burkina Faso, which is a very small country just north of Nigeria. Very poor country, one of the poorest countries in the world. Agriculture is important, and cotton is their #1 export out of Burkina Faso. And cotton farmers were being decimated because the bollworm was taking over the cotton fields. And in 2008, the government decided that it was going to take a bold move in sub-Saharan Africa and be the first African country to allow their farmers to have the benefit of biotech or GMO improved seed. And so since then, we've partnered with local seed companies, and we brought our Bolgar technology, which is insect protected cotton. And when I was over there recently, and I had a chance to meet with the farmer who was also the head of the Farmers Union over there, Karim Traore, he talked about the benefit of the technology, and here's what he talked about. He said, look, the fact that we're getting 50% higher yields, that's great, because now we're making more money, and these are poor farmers, but their livelihoods have improved. But he said even more importantly is our health has improved. In the past, before your technology, we had to spray our cotton fields about 8 times a year with insecticides. And the way they spray their cotton fields is they walk through the fields with a backpack sprayer and spray insecticides, typically in front of them without protective gear. And now they get insect protection in the plant. And so they don't have to go out in the field. And he said, on average, we will walk our farm 60 kilometers a year spraying insecticides before your technology. And now we're healthier. I'm healthier, my family's healthier, and that's been transformational. So, it was said earlier, when you get a chance to actually travel around the world and see the amazing need and opportunity that technology and innovation can bring, it's incredibly inspiring.
Well, you know, I should say as part of my reporting process for this, I came down and I visited Monsanto and I saw this plexiglass display case with 3 soybean plants in it. Mm-hmm. One of them completely defoliated, another one nearly defoliated, and the other one looking green and healthy. Mm-hmm. And the ones that were largely defoliated there were all these different worms or whatever in there chomping away at them, right? And the one that was green and healthy was the GMO plant. The others, if they were going to be green and healthy, would have had to have been sprayed a dozen times while they were growing. It raises the question, there is a choice that we make between whether we want to consume plants, crops, whether it's cotton or soy that have been sprayed multiple times with pesticide, or figure out this GMO thing. GMO also plays a role in can be drought resistant too. So when we think of sub-Saharan Africa and Asia and all the rest. So it's a very fascinating choice, this innovation that we have that is still so controversial. One last one before I open to the audience though. You're also into, now I don't know whether this is, you know, like BP doing solar power or whether, but you're into organics, right? I read about sweeter, crunchier lettuce.
Right, yes.
What's that?
Well, so again, we want to serve all agriculture, and we have a lot of customers that are organic customers. We don't just sell GMO seed. We sell a lot of seed that's
what
not
percentage
not
of
GMO.
of Monsanto is GMO?
Well, you know, from a seed standpoint, it's probably about half of our seeds that are sold have GMOs. I don't know exactly, you know, from a pounds or acres. We sell a lot of vegetable seed to organic growers. We sell corn and soybeans and cotton to farmers that buy it without GMOs. Europe is one of our fastest growing regions. We talked earlier that Europe doesn't have a lot of planting of GMOs, and so you can improve seed a lot of different ways. And the cool thing about seed, and when you improve seed, it's scale neutral. So a lot of technologies in agriculture require scale to really benefit from them. But things like seed and information are scale neutral. So if you can improve seed, if you can help farmers improve their soil, it can transform their lives. And I also want to mention, you know, the other area that I think is incredibly important is, as the young people here think about their future in terms of the opportunities, digital opportunities in agriculture are right in front of us. And so we have an initiative in India where we now connect with 3 million people using data on their smartphones. If they go to their field, they can upload a picture of a weed, send it to us, and we have an agronomist that then sends them back, you know, the identification of what the weed is and how they best control it. We also help them at harvest time, so they let us know when they've harvested their crop. We have people in the marketplace that are checking prices, because often these poor farmers work all year, they get their crop harvested, they take it to their local market in a wagon at harvest time, and they're price takers. They have no negotiating power. And so we have people in the marketplace that are checking prices, so we can let them know what a fair price is, so that when they go to town the next day, they actually have some bargaining power. So there's tremendous opportunity with digital as well.
I want to open it to the audience now. I'm going to ask you to keep your questions short and your answers succinct so we can go back and forth here productively for a few minutes. Identify who you are and where you're from. If you're from a school, what school you're from. Then we're going to have a networking break where you're going to have an opportunity to talk to lots of people. So I saw a hand. Let's see. Let's start over here with this woman. Have we got a microphone, or otherwise you can just stand and really shout it out? Oh, here comes the mic. So your name, school, and a short question.
Yeah, my name is Taylor Sanders. I'm from the University of Arizona. I noticed that you kind of dodged the superweed question, and so I wanted to hear your answer on that.
Right. Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, Frank's thrown a lot of things at me. I probably dodged a few of them because I don't have time to answer all of them. But on weeds, and so when herbicides are sprayed on weeds over time, and it's been like this from day one, there will be some weeds that eventually become resistant. And it's no different with GMO seed. And so we have inserted a Roundup Ready gene into corn, cotton, soybeans, canola plants, which allows farmers to get better weed control. But if you only spray Roundup or glyphosate on those weeds, eventually you will get some weeds that become resistant, and that's happened, which is very predictable. It's happened to virtually all the herbicides that are sold in or outside of GMO. So it has nothing to do with GMOs or biotechnology, but the idea that they're called superweeds is kind of unique. That term's kind of been used to frame this problem in GMOs.
Aren't they superweeds?
Well, they're no different. They're no different than the normal weeds. So they look the same.
But they've sort of mutated, right? They can now.
No, often it's just a natural population that has a resistance from day one. And if you only use one tool to try and control those weeds, eventually that population will be selected, and that's what's going to grow in your field. Okay. So what we recommend is farmers to use multiple modes of action on their weeds so that they can get long-term sustainable weed control.
So do you think that ever you could possibly eradicate all weeds? It just seems like in 50 years we're going to be using 100 different pesticides and
Right.
herbicides, and that's not possible.
Right. So Taylor, you know, when you talk to farmers, I would say after
They're here. You can talk to
after
them.
ensuring, yeah, talk to them here. After ensuring your soil's healthy, managing pests is one of the hardest things on the farm. No matter what kind of system you're in, whether it's organic or conventional. And so I think, you know, insect management, weed management, disease management, that'll be with us forever. It's been with us forever and will continue to be with us forever.
All
And
right, we'll take a couple more very quickly, and then you're going to be around for the break, I think,
will.
and you can chat with people out on the floor. Let's go to the back row there.
Hi, sorry. I'm Lucas Hostler, and I'm from George Washington University. So
From where?
I'm from George Washington University. So currently there's a blight ravaging banana crops throughout the world, and I'm wondering what the effect of increased monoculture will have on likelihood or susceptibility to diseases in our more stable crops.
Yeah, so Lucas, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to in terms of a blight that's going around the world, but you know, so diseases are relevant in virtually all crops, and so you know, I think monoculture again is there's in the U.S. there's lots of corn, soybeans, cotton, and other crops grown. Somebody said earlier, you need to let farmers make the decision. What can they grow best on their fields, and so and that's what farmers do. They look at what's the best opportunity from a growing condition standpoint, how can they market their grains, and you know, our job in agriculture from our perspective is to help give them tools so that they can be productive no matter what they decide to grow.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Let's come down here. Hang on one second, you got a mic coming. Wait, here comes the mic.
So, Mike, you said yourself that we need to make all agriculture more productive.
Right.
Part of the issue with GM crops today, I think, is the condensation of the industry. A shrinking number of corporations controlling information on plants, genome sequencing, research priorities, and seed patents. Mm-hmm. Small farmers are an indispensable component of...
Jordan, we need your question.
Okay, sustainable food future. So how do we democratize the knowledge and information and still maintain profit incentives for new innovation?
Great. So Jordan, that's a great question. So there's no doubt that as a company, we've been successful with our GMO seed, and we were early on in the game. Today, there's a lot of companies and institutions that are doing research on GMOs, and today farmers have choice. And so virtually in every crop that we're in, there's also competitive choice, which is good for the farmers. We often hear about the consolidation of power in the seed industry. Our company sells less than 5% of the seeds that are planted in the world. So we are the world's largest seed company, and we sell less than 5% of the seeds that are sold and planted. So I'm not sure if that's large or small in the big scheme of things. Farmers have lots of choices here and everywhere else in the world. There's local companies, there's large companies like ourselves, and then they make the decision based on what they think is in their best interest.